Hi guys, it's Colette, and today we're going to be working on these Hollow Knight inspired Nightmare King Grimm nails for Halloween. If you like nail art, be sure you subscribe to my channel, My Simple Little Pleasures, and if you'd like to see how I did these, just stay tuned. Starting out with clean dry nails, we're going to begin with the base coat. I'm using Ready for Takeoff, which is a peel-off base, and you can use whichever is your personal favorite. Most of the colors that I'll be using today are Zoya. This gray, which I'll be using as the base on most of my fingers, is Caitlin. This white, which I'll be using as a base on the nails that are getting a decal, is Snow White. The black is Willa. I'll be using that as an accent on the gray nails, you'll see. The red is China. I'll be using that as an accent on the nails with the decals. And then this other red is Nubar Unfaithful Red, and I'll be stamping with this. And then finally, not a nail polish, I'll be using this black acrylic paint on my decals because it's a little bit easier to work with than black polish. And to help peel up my decals, I'm using Sally Hansen Invisible as my base. But the next thing I need to do is get my base color done. For these decals, we're going to start out with a coat of clear. This should make it easier to peel them up. And I'm just using Sally Hansen Extreme Wear in Invisible. And I've already sized my fingers. I'm basically going to be using these 2 squares size on the mat. So I'm going to cover those with a little bit of overlap in clear. So going slightly over the edges, then I'll have a lip to pull it up by. And then I'm going to go ahead and let that dry for a couple minutes. For most of this design, I'm going to be using black acrylic paint. It's just a little bit easier to work with than black polish. And I have a plastic lid off to the side that I've just got a little bit of that out. I've got a small brush that I'm going to be working with. And I do have a couple reference pictures as well as my polished sketchbook on hand. I'll maybe show some of the reference pictures at the very end of the video if you're unfamiliar with this character. I'm going to start out by just kind of eyeballing the middle and starting to draw in his chin here. On each side, his chin comes to a little point like that. And then eyeballs. The eyeballs have given me some trouble in my tests, so I'm just going to try and take it slow and steady and keep them as even and symmetrical as possible. So, and acrylic paint does dry slower than nail polish, but if you feel like your brush is getting like dry or sticky, go ahead and clean it off. And I'm just gonna, like I said, very carefully try to keep them as even as I can. Once you've got the eyes to your satisfaction, the next step that I decided to do is to get his little widow's peak in here. So it comes to a point down in between his eyes, like so, and then kind of off to the side, and creates a little face mask like this. Then, the kind of next step is he's got some pretty tall horns. I'd like to keep the horns on my nail, So I'm going to bring the side of his head up and around, up toward that top line here, but not quite all the way. My nails aren't quite that long. And try to keep these symmetrical also. Like that. And then they come down in the center like that. So I'm going to fill in these horns. And then I'm going to move on to the second one, but I'm not quite done. I do want to add some red accents, but I'm going to give the black acrylic paint a little bit of time to dry before I do that, because I think it will make it a little bit easier. Once you're done and the paint has had a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to add some red for the eyes. And for me, I found this easier to just do after the black. This is Zoya China. And I'm just going to go in and very carefully add the red, leaving a little bit of a black outline, but basically filling in and making his eyes this sparkly, sparkly red. And then I'm going to leave these decals to finish drying. Once you've finished your base color, your decals should be mostly dry. Just gave mine a little tap test, and now I'm going to try and slowly start pulling them up at the edge of the clear. And so far so good, you guys. This is kind of like the moment of truth. Alrighty, we have a decal. Hopefully this one comes up as well. And I'm just getting a little lip, just going at the edge like that, and then grabbing it gently with the tweezer and pulling slowly. If there was any resistance, I would stop. Okay, so those are ready to go. And the next step is going to be sticking them on my nails. So for my decals, I think I did a pretty good job of keeping them appropriately sized for my nails. But this one, the horns are a little bit longer. I want them to be pointy on the nail. I don't want them going off the edge of the nail. So what I'm actually going to try here is a slight trimming of the decal to trim the horns a little bit shorter. Like that. And again on this side, like that. And then I'm just going to trim off the rest of that tip there carefully. Kind of hard to keep this on camera, you guys, I'm sorry. Right there. That doesn't look too bad. So you see, I didn't really remove that much of the horns right there, but I think it made quite a good difference. Now they're closer to the same size. Oh, my tweezer is stuck. Okay, they're not fully dry. Be careful not to stick them together or to stick them on anything you don't want them stuck to. But I do think they're dry enough that it would be helpful to use a little bit of yellow stopper to apply them on my nails. So on each of the white nails, I'm just going to apply a thin coat of the yellow stopper and give that just a second to dry. Once the yellow stopper has dried and it's to a tacky consistency, I'm going to try to line up the point of Grimm's chin with the tip of my nail, and maybe if I grab it from down here, This is kind of tricky. Actually, okay, I wasn't going to trim these, but we are. We're going to trim off the bottom by his chin. And we're going to trim off the top by his horns. Even though this one we're not trimming the horns. And I think that'll make it a little bit easier to apply him on my nail. So, I've got a piece of clear stuck on me. We're going to line this up like that. Make sure his chin is kind of right at the edge of my nail. Pull him forward just a little bit. I want the points of the horns on my nail also. And then press them down like that. Okay. Next, we've got this little bit extra around the edges. I'm just going to take my nail implement, it's just pretty sharp, and kind of break that clear around the edge. If it'll let me. This clear is kind of stubborn. If you need a sharper tool, like a little scissors or a cuticle nippers, don't be afraid to grab that. You don't want to like mess up your design just trying to trim off the excess of the decal. Like that. And we'll do a final cleanup around the edges like we always do with a small brush dipped in polish remover. So you don't have to be exact, but if you can get as close as you can, that'll save a little bit of work. And around the top too. Almost perfect sized, although we did lose just a little bit of the point of his horns. Still looks pretty good. I could have pulled him a tiny bit closer to the tip of my nail, but it's not too bad. Now, I slightly smudged this ring finger, but we're going to do basically the same thing with the other decal. Although I didn't trim this one at the chin. Place it right on there. Oh, come on. You can also use your fingers if you lose patience with the tweezers. And stick it right on there. Like that. Oh, and I actually could have trimmed even more off of these horns now that I see it on my nail. So when I trim off the excess edges, we are probably going to lose a little bit of his horn point also. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how these decals turned out. So I'm going to finish trimming these and then we'll move on to the other nails. I decided to do just a little bit of touch up before I move on and to add one detail for Grimm that I forgot to add on the decal. So he's got these little lines coming across his face on his eyeball. So we're going to add them in above and below right there. And above and below right there. So the nails without faces are going to be representative of his cloak, which is like a black and gray sort of a thing. We're going to be using the black polish for this and a one-stroke inspired technique, although we're only using one color. So I've got just a dot of black and I'm going to pick it up on just the corner of this flat brush and then I'm going to just stroke it onto my nail so that it creates a little bit of a gradient like that, and repeat that for the next like a ripple in his cloak. I don't know how else to explain it. So we're looking for it to be dark at the very top and then kind of a gradient, and I'm going to repeat that for all the gray nails. Next step, I'm going to be adding some essence, which is basically like spiritual energy in the game. And I found a couple of stamping plates that have some fruit images that look really close to how it looks in the game, actually. So these, like, two next to each other are on Bundle Monster 04 plate, and this slightly larger one that's just here by itself is on Conad M55. So I'm going to start out with the larger one. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be using Nubar Unfaithful Red for my stamping. I've got my Moyu Crystal Clear stamper and scraper, and I'm just going to be adding some of those randomly on the cloak nails. Next, I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup around the edges, anywhere where there's a little bit of excess polish or where I've overstamped, using a Q-tip for some of the large areas, and then as usual, going in with a small brush and using 100% acetone. Finally, I'm going to be finishing everything off with a top coat, and as usual, I'm using Seche Vite. So here's the finished manicure, and I'm actually really pleased with how this turned out. There are a couple things I could definitely nitpick, but overall I feel like I executed all the ideas that I had, and Grimm is recognizable. If you're unfamiliar with Hollow Knight, it's a video game, and this is one of the characters. I'll include a couple of my reference pictures up in the corner so you can see what he actually looks like in the game. And if you're into video games, I cannot recommend Hollow Knight enough. I would recommend it to anyone. It's my favorite game, and I've actually started speedrunning it over on my Twitch channel. So if you're interested in that, definitely head on over to my Twitch channel and check it out. You can also find the VOD of the live stream where I did the polish testing and extended tutorial for this design. And I'd love to hear what you all think down in the comments. And if you play Hollow Knight, I'd also love to hear what you think down in the comments, because I could talk Hollow Knight all day long. But I hope you guys all have a safe, happy, fun Halloween. And as always, thanks for watching.